Welcome to Laguna Tools. I'm Jay Andrews. Today, we've got a brand new machine here for you. This is our brand new line of Flux dust collectors. This is the new Flux 1 for 2022. Now your dust collector is going to arrive by common carrier truck, and they'll bring it in with a lift gate and a pallet jack, and it's what we call curbside delivery. That means they get it down off the truck and onto the property for you. If it's an easy rollout, sometimes they'll roll it a little bit further, but you should be prepared to receive your machine. Now if you've got a pallet jack like this, that's great. If not, if you have a 2-wheel or a 4-wheel dolly that you can set the machine on, get some help and roll it into your shop and get it into a clean workspace. You can also open up your box at the curbside and bring it in piece by piece if you'd like to, and that may make it easier for some installations. When your machine arrives, take a moment to walk around the machine, look at the box, look at the pallet, and make sure that your machine isn't damaged. You're not looking for little holes like you see here. What you're looking for is a place where the forklift may have come in and pierced the packaging and damaged the machine. If you see something like that, take a moment, note it on the shipping carrier's receipt, and then give us a phone call within 48 hours so that we can go through and file a claim with the carrier and get you square on your machine. If you see something like that, make note of it, take a few photos of those and send those in to us as well at customerservice@lagunatools.com. Now if everything looks okay on the outside, or if you're unsure, go ahead and unbox the machine and see if there's any damage on the inside. And if there is, then again, give us a phone call or send us an email to customer service and we'll get that taken care of for you. Once you open the top of the box, you'll notice that you've got your owner's manual and assembly manual right up on top here, along with a remote control and a few accessories. Go ahead and lift these out, get them set on the workbench. Read through the instructions before you start any assembly. Now that all the components are out of the top section of the box, let's go ahead and close the lid, and we're going to remove the box. I like to cut it right along the corner because there are protection posts in all 4 corners. The other way to do it, if you're trying to save the packaging, is to release the staples at the bottom of the box and lift it off in one piece. Now that you've got the box out of the way and you've got some of the styrofoam out of the way, we're going to lift off the top section here. There are some parts stored underneath this, so just be real careful when you lift it off. And get this set onto the workbench. Now that you have your Flux dust collector uncrated to this stage here, go through and organize all the parts on your workbench so that they're all laid out. Take a few moments to go through and read the manual so that you can go through and follow along. Now I've laid out the parts here on the bench, and I've put the like items with the like items. I've got the casters and the wheels over here, the different brackets that look like they're the same type of part together. And it's important to keep the packing materials away from you. So as we're unboxing the machine, I'm putting the packing materials into the trash can. You want to keep the hardware bags closed until you're ready to open them. So we've got the foot pedal bar bag right here. We've got the bags here for the drum assembly. We'll open those up as we get to each of those components. But in the meantime, just kind of lay everything out, know where your parts are, and start your assembly. It's time to handle the heaviest single component of the machine. And this is a time that you're going to need 2 or 3 friends to help you out. This is a heavy component. It's got the motor, the entire frame of the machine. We're going to use the styrofoam that was part of the packing that was originally on top of this to act as a cradle to hold the machine in the upside down position as we assemble the entire base on the machine. Get your friends to help you out. I'm going to go through and cut away the styrofoam on the bottom just to give me some room to work and to tip the machine over. Now with some of the styrofoam knocked away, you can open the cabinet door. Just simply push down on the button, rotate the handle, and open the door and lift everything out of the central section here so that it doesn't fall over as you're flipping the machine. Make sure that both the left and right doors are latched, that all the accessories are out of the way, and you have plenty of space to tip the machine over. Next, take the styrofoam and reinsert it on top of the machine and get some help to tip it over gently. Now that the machine is upside down, before moving the pallet out of the way, there's 2 more parts right here. These are portions of the drum. Go ahead and set these to the side, move your pallet out of the way, and get ready for assembly. The next step is to go through and remove the mobile base to install the casters and the other components on it. Your machine is shipped with 3 wrenches from the factory that you can go through and do the assembly with. If you have other wrenches, you may prefer to use those. I like to use a better wrench, and so I'll go ahead and use this. This is a number 14. Now there's 2 bolts here, 2 bolts here, and then finally 2 in the back that we're going to remove and lift the base off. Let's go to work. Now with all 6 bolts removed, lift off the base and set it on the workbench. These will show you exactly where all 6 of those bolts were. You can dispose of the spacers. Let's put the casters on now. There's 2 different types. There's plain swiveling casters and there are locking swiveling casters. The locking swiveling casters are going to move out to the ends of the base. The plain swiveling casters are going to go into the end with a grid. And then finally, you're going to find 16 of the bolts to install those in the bag. Now this is the intake vane, which will be the first part that we're going to install onto the machine. Locate the hardware bag that'll be marked Cyclone barrel and Cyclone drum, and inside of that you'll find a bag that is marked the Cyclone vane. This is also a vane assembly, and we're going to use the 4 bolts that have lock washers to install this. Now install the Cyclone vane right over the holes beneath the impeller, and you'll have the lock washer first and then the flat washer that's going to go against the flange on the vane. Put those down hand tight and then secure those with a wrench. Now the next step is to install the inlet drum and then the funnel assembly. But pay attention to where the seam is down the side of each unit here. You're going to align those 2 seams together so that they have a nice continuous line during assembly. The gasketed top of the inlet drum is going to be mounted up in the machine, so that means we're going to flip it upside down right now since our machine is upside down. Now place the inlet drum on the machine, and you'll feel that the gasket is seated between the machine body and the drum. Now there's a decision to make right here. Most of our customers will go through and use the inlet tube here for the machine straight ahead, but you can actually rotate this to the right or left to match the installation and usage in your shop. So decide what you want to use for your position of the inlet tube, line it up, and then install the 12 bolts. This will be a 12mm wrench. Finally, install the funnel assembly onto the intake drum. And this is the spot where we want to make sure that we line up the seams to keep your Flux dust collector looking as good as possible. The funnel assembly is secured to the drum using the bolt with washer and then a nut with washer for the bottom. Insert the bolt up through the bottom, washer, and then finally the nut. Repeat the process for all 12 bolts and secure with a wrench. All right, we're going to start with panel marked number 1 with the single hole in it. The holes go toward the bottom, the insert nuts go toward the top. We're going to use the same hardware that we took out of when it was at the machine. Simply line it up over the insert nuts and thread these in place. Now for this installation, we're going to do a standard configuration, meaning we're going to leave the switch panel on the same side that the machine is shipped with. And so that'll mean that our next panel is going to be panel number 2, and that'll go toward the front side of the machine. Okay, so now we've got this panel in place. I'll leave these finger tight until I've got it all the way down. And secure the bolts. And we'll move on to number 2. Now remember that the machine is upside down right now, and this is right side up, so make sure that you've got the correct side for number 2. Number 2 is going to go onto this side, which will be the front side, and you should see these insert nuts toward the front or to the opposite side here. So that'll indicate that it goes right here. We'll drop this in place, and we'll repeat the process on the other side. Now finally, panel number 3 with the 3 holes. Four bolts out, 2 more to go inside. Now lift off the panel, repeat this process on the other side, and swap the panel from side to side. You will also need to remove this tab and place it on the opposite side. This is the tab for the door catch as the door shuts. Now that the uprights have been installed on the mobile base and it's flipped upside down, we're going to lift it on top, and we're going to bring the bolts up through the holes that are already in the machine. They're going to come into the insert nuts that are at the bottom of the uprights, and we're going to tighten those down with the 5/16 bolts. Go ahead and line them all up with the washers and bolt it in place. I find it's easiest to line it up and get them set up in the holes and then bring the bolts in. As you're getting these 6 bolts in place, make sure that they're all snug but just still finger tight so you can make any adjustments needed before you tighten them down with a wrench. These last 2 bolts can be a little bit tricky, but they can be easily accessed with the wrench coming in at a slight angle and securing them down. If you feel more comfortable, you can remove the filter assembly just by simply loosening this center bolt and then unlocking the filter at the top and then sliding it off. It may be a little bit easier for some of you, but you can reach them without removing the filter. Now you want to locate the support brackets and the 5/16 bolts. There'll be 12 of these total, and I'll show you where these are going to go. Now the reinforcement plate is going to bolt right between here, the upper and the lower sections, to reinforce this joint. It's simply position it right over the nut certs and install the 4 bolts. Okay, now that the reinforcing brackets are in place on all 3 columns, you're actually ready to flip the machine over. But there's one consideration you might want to do right now while it's still upside down. If you are going to orient the inlet drum differently than it comes set from the factory, now is a good time. Let me show you where this is at. This is the inlet drum for the dust collector, and you'll see that the inlet port is here. Normally, as this is shipped, it comes straight into the unit, but you can rotate this inlet drum by loosening up the bolts here to the base and rotating this drum either clockwise or counterclockwise to have this pointed from a number of different directions. If you're going to use the machine just as is, we'll move to the next steps. If you're going to go through and customize the orientation, loosen the bolts, rotate it, bolt it back in place, and then flip the machine over. You're going to need some help to do this because the heavy part now is down here and it's going to end up at the top. So I've laid out some cardboard. You can lay out some moving blankets or some of the styrofoam to make it easy. The first thing is let's go ahead and pull it over, and you'll tilt the styrofoam at the same time, and it's going to come and land down here on the cardboard or on your moving blanket. Now that your Flux is on its wheels, you can move it around the shop easily. Now, we stood the machine up with 2 people, but you might need 3 or 4 depending on your ability. You may also need the use of a lift to stand it upright. It's a heavy machine. We want to make sure that that part goes smoothly for you. So make sure that you take all precautions needed. The next step is to get the cap on the bottom of the filter. To do that, we'll open up the door and expose the HEPA filter, and you'll see that there's catches at the bottom. The cap assembly has got corresponding latches that will connect to those latches. Now, one of the great features of the new Flux system here goes along with the HEPA filter. It now has automatic filter cleaning, and it has a really nice clean out right here at the bottom. You can connect a 4-inch hose to this and clean out the dust out of the bottom of the catch drum. Now locate the triangular support brackets and the 3/8 bolts and washers, and let's install these on the front rail. Now repeat the process on the opposite side. Now locate the 2 foot pedal support brackets, and you can identify these by the carriage bolt, the square hole for the carriage bolt. The carriage bolts will be in the foot pedal hardware bag. Let's go ahead and bolt these onto the frame. The foot pedal support brackets go with the tab up. The square holes are going to line up with the square holes on the side of the frame, and it'll be just behind the hole. The carriage bolts go from the outside of the frame through the bracket, and the nuts install on the inside. Locate the 2 foot pedal bars. There's a left and a right, and when you set these on the bench, make sure that this little post is pointed up. That post is identified by accepting the rollers that will go on there. The left side looks like an F. Let's go ahead and install these on the machine. This is the left bracket. The post is on the inside and the arm will be on the inside. The bottom of the post is going to slide to the open section of the triangle bracket, and the top is going to slide in through this hole and rest on the bracket that we installed on the side panels. Simply slide this in, and as you do so, make sure that the post is on the inside of the triangle bracket, that the arm is on the inside. Now let's get the 1 3/4 bolt and bolt it into place. You're going to use the 1 3/4 bolts. Go ahead and put a washer on it, and these will install into the bracket on the bottom side. Before you do that, take the foot pedal bar and align it. Put your hand on the inside where the bracket is, slide it all the way back until they're flush, and then bring the bolts in from the bottom, and then finally put a washer and a nut on the top of the bolt. Now in the manual it shows you installing these bolts and nuts with the cover plate in here, and it's a little difficult. So what I have found that makes it a lot easier is to remove the reinforcement bracket. Only remove one side at a time. This will give you room to put the bolt and the nut in here for the pedal bar. And then once you're done, reinstall this one, and then you can remove the one on the opposite side. Now with the left side done, we're ready to install the right side foot pedal bar. And again, this will have the post that's on the inside. I've already removed the upright bracket support to make it a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and insert it into the frame. Now next, locate the two U-channels that have the two holes in them, the 1 3/4 bolts and nuts and washers, and we're going to install these on the bottom section of the foot pedal bar. The U bracket slides over the bottom of the foot pedal bar, and the bolts go from the inside to the outside so that you have a smooth face against the drum on the inside. Now that the foot pedal bars are secured in place, we're going to install the covers that cover the foot pedal bars. Locate these two covers. The notches will be at the top. This will be the left, and this will be the right side. You're going to locate the bag of hardware. There should be 3 bolts each. Install the cover plate right over the foot pedal bar. And simply insert the bolts into the holes in the back. Now repeat the process on the other side. Now locate the octagonal foot pedal bar, which will be this assembly. You're going to locate these 2 rollers that have the tapered in, and then finally the countersunk screws that match those. You will need a 5mm Allen wrench. You can use one like this, or you can use just a standard Allen wrench to install these. The large diameter holes on the foot pedal bar are going to install right over these lugs that are on the foot pedal bars that we had. Simply slide it over on one side and then press it in and align the other. Next, the rollers will go on and slide over, and finally tighten the Allen screw. Make sure that the leg for this bar is in the up position. Install the roller on the opposite side and secure. Finally, we're going to take these 2 remaining bolts that are in that same hardware package along with the nylon locking nuts and install them on the foot pedal bar. Now this process can take a little bit of patience, but it's worth it. Grab your bolt, raise the octagonal bar, raise the rod, and insert the bolt from the outside of the rod toward the inside. Lift it into position behind the cover. Grab the lug with your finger. This is spring-loaded, and you'll use that spring-loaded to position it. And put your thumb over the bolt, raise the bar into position, and finally line everything up, and then raise the bar slightly and rotate it to where the bolt drops into the hole. Next, grab the nylon locking nut and insert it on the end of the bolt. Tighten this down with a wrench, but don't tighten it all the way. Leave some slack, otherwise this handle will bind up. Now tighten down this nut, but again, not too tight. Leave some slop in there so the bar can move. Use a 17mm on the outside and a 14 on the inside. And that should be good. I have enough slop there for it to move. Now that the octagonal bar is installed, just give it a quick run through to make sure it stays in the down position and comes up to the spring-loaded top position. That's perfect. The next component that we're going to install is the drum lid. And this is kind of a unique feature, that the drum lid stays on the machine itself and not on the drum. You'll find the bag here that's marked drum lid, and this will have the associated hardware and the foam tape. You'll also find the bolts that are needed for the LED light that's going to mount right here. And then finally there's this crossbar that'll bolt to the bottom. You're going to need a number 8mm wrench, and you'll need a Phillips head screwdriver to attach the bolts there for the LED light. Let's go ahead and install the foam tape and then put this on the machine. This is the sensor that senses the level of the dust inside your waste drum, and it's easiest to install it when it's already mounted to the bottom flange here, but it's easiest to show it right here. So you'll simply remove the nut on the bottom of the sensor, install it through, and then get the thread started back here. Now, this is a flush mount sensor. You don't need to have it protruding down into the drum, so go ahead and get it flushed up, and then finally lock the screw in place. The LED light is going to drop over here, and the screw is going to go in from the top. Now remove the tag that is set in the metal flange. And this tag is to indicate that this metal flange can rotate. This will only rotate when the bolts are loose, and when you tighten the lid down, this will become fixed in place. So you'll put these in finger tight, rotate it to the correct position and orientation, and then finally secure the bolts, and that'll lock the flange in place. So remove the tag from the deflector bar. The deflector bar will go across any of the holes on the bottom as we install it. This actually aids in the separation and also keeps you from having safety issues with people reaching into the cyclone. Get your bolts lined up with the washers and drop them through the holes on the flange, and just rotate them until you're done. Now with the bolts up in place, line up the sensor toward the back of the drum. Line up your bolt here with the front and the front right here, and get ready with your nuts and washers. And this might be easy if you had another person with you, or you can do it by yourself, but just simply bring it up in place and start one or two bolts to hold it in place. Now I've got two of these nuts installed, and they're only finger tight so that I can still rotate this drum lid in the body of the machine. The next piece I'm going to install is this little flange that goes on the inside. You'll select any two bolts to put it across. I find that if you put it on a diagonal so that it's away from the sensor, it's a little bit easier to install. Put this in place and then finger tighten those two bolts. Now make sure that these are just finger tight. Leave them loose so that you can rotate the lid. Carefully rotate it to expose the hole for the drum sensor. And let's go ahead and install the drum sensor. Since we've already adjusted the nut on the top sensor here, it should drop in place and be flush on the bottom. Install the bottom nut and then tighten it down fully with your fingers so that it doesn't move. Now the sensor and the LED light have a lot of extra cord, and it's that way to make the installation easier, and it also makes it easier to change sides on the control if you wanted to do that. You can simply take the twist tie that came with the wires, or put on a couple of zip ties if you'd like to, shorten the length up, and then we'll tuck right in behind the panel into the pocket. Position the LED light over the window and secure it in place using the enclosed hardware. Now let's just recenter the lid, and we can secure those in a moment. I'd like to fit the drum first. Let's go ahead and build the drum. Now we've laid out all the components here for the Flux drum assembly. We've greatly simplified the assembly of the drum by making it three major components. We've got the base and the two side pieces. We've got handles and wheels and so forth like that to install. I've got them all laid out here. You'll find the drum hardware package. Let's go ahead and put the casters on the bottom of the base plate. Now that the wheels are on the base, let's go ahead and put the handles on the drum. Get the 10 sheet metal screws and your screwdriver and slide the two drum halves together and then run the screws in. Now that the drum is assembled, you're going to install the lift brackets on each side. They only fit on one way and they use the carriage style bolts. Now that we've got the lift brackets installed, flip the drum and put the base on using the enclosed screws. The base goes on and fastens with these holes. Let's lift it out of the place for just a moment here and apply a little bit of silicone seal to the base and to the sides, and that helps to prevent any dust from escaping out of your dust collection drum. This is a good time for two people. You're going to put screws in through the bottom and the small nuts through the top. Now that the drum is completely assembled and you've got the base attached, you'll want to run the silicone sealer over all the seams on the inside, including the base, on the sides, and just a little lip around the rim here before putting on the gasket. The gasket is just a press fit and it's got a little metal liner inside of it that grabs a hold of the edge of the drum, and you'll run this all the way around with the part of the rubber gasket protruding up away from the drum. With the drum seal wrapped all the way around, you'll finally cut it to length using a pair of diagonal cutters. And finally press it in place. Okay, all done. Let's go ahead and take it over to the machine. Now that we've got the drum ready to go, we're going to test fit the drum while the lid is still loose. Slide it in to where the lift tabs engage the pickup rollers and push down the bar. Now that's secure. Make sure that the lid is centered and square. Now you can go back in and tighten these 6 bolts around the top that we had finger tightened before. Remove the drum by lowering it to the ground, pulling it out of the way, and putting a wrench on and tightening down these 6 bolts. The P-Flux dust collector can be used either with or without a bag. If you're using it without a bag, you want to go through and just dump out the drum and clean it out. If you're using it with a bag, it makes it a lot easier just to get rid of the waste, drop a new bag in, and keep your work in the shop going. The first 2 sections are joined together. Bring the next one together. Now finally bring the last panel into place. Again, making sure that all the rubber handles are put toward the top. Secure one side and then the other. Your new P-Flux can be operated without a bag because you sealed the inside with the silicone, and the rubber gasket will hold it up against the lid and prevent the sawdust from leaking. But to make it easy to use and easy to empty, we like to use a plastic bag, so that your machine is supplied with several plastic bags, and you can order more on our website at lagunatools.com. There's a good technique for installing these that makes it real easy. Just take the plastic bag, slide it over the drum liner, and then drop the entire liner inside. Do it like this. The drum liner is going to hold the bag against the outside of the drum and keep it from rattling around or getting it sucked up inside the cyclone. Leave the excess of the bag hanging over the side, slide it into place just like you did last time, and raise it to the up position. Now there's a lot of bag hanging on the outside, but that's so you can cinch the bag, tie it off, and dispose of it properly. The P-Flux Cyclone is designed to be a portable or mobile cyclone, and so it has wheels on the bottom that will swivel and lock. The canister, the drum canister here, is actually pulled right off the ground when you engage the bar, and it has its own wheels on it. When you're moving the entire cyclone, the drum is captive and its wheels are off the ground. One of the great features of the Flux cyclone dust collector is the automatic filter cleaning. This will handle all the cleaning of the filter that you need. You don't have to blow it out anymore. To connect this, simply remove the strain relief connector at the bottom, slide it over the wires, and feed it down onto the cable. You'll find that there are 4 wires to make this connection. Once you have that slid over, open up the box. There's a single Phillips head screw here. And you're going to make the connections inside with black to black, red to red, white to white, and then the green will land on the green ground connection on the side. And this is the last of the connections here. This is the ground that goes to the screw there. So you've got red to red, white to white, black to black, green, which is your ground, over on the ground screw. Now you can reinstall the cover. The reason that this is left loose is so that you can change this from side to side, change the control panel from side to side easily. The Flux 1 comes standard as a 110 volt machine. The 2 and the 3 are normally 220 volt machines from the factory. To make the connection on 110 volt for the Flux 1, you're going to find your green for the ground, your black will be for your hot lead, and your white is going to be for your neutral lead. And that's the 110 volt setup. Installing a plug is just a simple matter of making 3 connections on the plug. If you need to, you can contact our service staff to walk you through this, or you can contact a qualified electrician. If you're connecting this machine as a 220 volt machine, you'll need to change out the switch that you can get from our service staff, and the connections will be green for ground, black for hot, and white for hot. Those will be both 110 volt legs to make 220 volt. So your green for your ground, black for hot, white for hot on 220 volt connections, and that'll take a replacement of the switch. In one of the hardware bags, you're going to find a little small plastic screwdriver, and this is used to tune the sensor, the drum level sensor. If you find that the drum level light is coming on too soon or too late, you can actually fine tune the sensor at the back of the drum here using the screwdriver. It's plastic so that it doesn't get any type of frequency problems when making that tuning. The last thing to install on your Flux dust collector is the snorkel here, or the splitter. Now you can use this with a standard pipe coming out of it and branch off to a system, or you can go through and run 2 independent hoses by connecting this and installing this screw. Well, we've covered just about everything on the assembly of the Flux dust collectors. Now this is the Flux 1. You'll follow the same procedures for the Flux 2 and the Flux 3. We're really proud of some of these new features that are introduced here for 2022. You're going to see the max level indicated on the window for the drum. Drum assembly is a lot easier, being that it's 3 pieces. You've got the ambidextrous switch system here that can be mounted on the left-hand side or right-hand side of the machine. You've got a new clean out on the bottom of the filter, and a few other nice to have features on the dust collection. Don't forget the remote. The remote control is a radio frequency remote that won't mess with your lighting in the shop, and you don't necessarily have to have line of sight to make it operate. So you can operate the dust collector in a separate room. If you have any questions on the Flux system, give us a call toll free at 800-234-1976, or look us up on the web at lagunatools.com. Thanks for joining us today.